Are you winning? Do you need help in your life or business? Could you use some inspiration, business strategies, and success principles? I'm Daniel Gomez, award-winning business coach, keynote speaker, and best-selling author. On the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, we will help you create a successful life and elevate your business. Together, we will discover the keys that unlock your success and dreams. Welcome back to another episode of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, where we motivate you, we inspire you. And today, man, we're going to educate you. We got a special treat all the way from Florida. Let's welcome to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, Ms. Michelle Jacobik. Michelle, how you doing?
Hey, Daniel. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here with you.
Well, I know the amazing rock star you are. Do me a favor, introduce yourself to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, please.
Yes, so everybody who's listening, this is going to be just a lot of fun. And I love coming in front of new audiences and just sharing the journey, right, of where I started, which was the 20-year-old who leapt out of the house at 19 and landed in a sea of credit card debt and payday loans at a time back in the 80s where that wasn't normal. At the same time that I was literally working my angel investors, Visa and MasterCard, I was working for a financial services firm and learning about compound interest and money and personal and professional development. And that journey took me through those dark roads of literally trying to keep up with the Joneses and putting on that fake it till you make it mantra into a place of needing to figure it out. And I, over the last 30 years, have gone from financial expert to owning a property and casualty agency and growing that, to multiple millions, and then taking a 7-figure exit 10 years ago, hard to believe. And now working in a space of working with other entrepreneurs as a business advisor and author and speaker, empowering people to get clear about the money aspects of their personal finances and their business and how it all blends together because it's married, as you know.
Yes, well, I already said it's going to be a great episode, right? Because you love talking about just money and business, and it appalls me, right? Because I teach and I train on the millionaire mind, the makings of a millionaire mind, and right, it's a brain changer. But why do
Yes.
you think the brain in so many human beings rejects money?
Yeah. I think that fear and money for most people, it's joined at the hip, right? But if you really want to get on a path to profits, you've got to change your unhelpful money stories. We all have a different story. And then we partner with somebody who has their own story as well, right? And the thing is, if you're not clear about what the money story is, if you can't figure out how to neutralize the numbers personally and professionally, you honestly end up having such emotional meaning that gets tied to the numbers and you can't move into the next phase. More numbers. Well, if you actually get neutral with the numbers, you'll make clearer decisions, right? But if you're coming with the money stuff, the fear is already there because they live on the same plane, right? And so cleaning up those pieces of our money story, acknowledging them, and then starting to shift the mind and our language, right? I always say it starts here, but mostly what comes out of here, right?
Yes,
Because when we speak the things that we're speaking about money, such as we can't afford that, we literally are cementing ourselves now and in the future. And we're literally keeping our own family's financial DNA stuck. Instead
yes.
of teaching our kids or our spouse who may have their own money stuff as we're learning, we get to use it and say, what else is possible? What can we create? What are we not seeing? Rather than saying those words, we can't afford it.
Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a part of the show where I say, get out your pen and get out your paper, and you want to take some massive notes because Michelle's going to drop some massive wisdom. And remember what we say here on the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show: what you write down, you retain over 50% of it. And then you're going to go back and you're going to watch this episode again and study your notes because I want you to leave here
Yes.
different. I want you to leave here impact. So get out your pen, get out your paper, because what you write down, you retain even more. So
Agreed.
just to give our audience a point of reference, define what a money story means to you, right? Because I love the concept of money story. So
Yeah.
if someone has a bad money story, what does it look like? If somebody has a good money story, what does it look like?
Yeah. So I'll just share, I think, a little bit of my own experience to kind of be that relatable piece of like not even knowing that I had a money story. Okay. You
Okay,
heard
yeah,
me say I left out, right? Most of us don't know our money story. And when we
yes. I
actually
love the
go
way you
back and
said
we
that.
it's so true. Like you heard me say, I left out at 19 years old, right? Well, what made me leap out at 19 years old? And with this huge sense of adult confidence that I had just gone from making $7.52 an hour to 11.50. And it's like I hit the jackpot, right? So part of the money story was I didn't even have a sense of what it was going to cost me to actually live on my own and have to pay for not just groceries and the rent and the lights to be turned on, but things like shaving cream, shampoo, all the things that your parents just have at your disposal when you're a 19-year-old. And so for me, my money story really was amplified when I leapt out, started playing, using credit cards, and really seeing that for me, I was like, oh, I had a vision board. I had a private jet on there. I answered every ad that said make six figures because I believed that my parents, who came from humble upbringings, I could do it better and I could do it differently. So first, I just had a cocky attitude about it. But I always was able to create money at an early age, right? From the lemonade stand to babysitting, like I loved creating money,
You were
but
the
I
go-getter.
wasn't yeah, I was a go-getter, but I wasn't using that energy in a way that would have amplified my abilities. I wasn't learning. Well, even when I was learning, I was screwing up. So from the money perspective, it wasn't until I actually was chasing all the shiny objects, right? That all seemed like the right thing at the time because I was like, yes, I'm a go-getter. But the reality was that I had landed in the mound of debt, right? So it wasn't normal 3 years later to have $15,000 worth of debt. Now it's normal to have student loan debt, but that wasn't normal to have credit card debt and payday loans back then. My blind eye and my mantra, the fake it till you make it, was totally going to be revealed because I ran out. I ran out of credit. And then I was faced with not just having to clean up the debt, I was faced with the chains of guilt, the shame that I had been wearing for a couple of years that nobody knew about because I got really good at faking it. And it took me 3 years to figure my way out, three different jobs, right? I put the emphasis and the focus there. But the money story was really me stepping back as I moved through that and said, okay, why did this even happen? Right? What is the lesson? Because there's always lessons when we start to look at our money story, good or bad, right? We can amplify the good and say, wow, I learned this because I was raised a certain way. Or this is what I learned because I have this history of whatever my story. My story wasn't even my mother's
So,
story.
so, so let me ask you this. At that point, you're 19 years old. You leave. 3 years later, you're $15,000 in debt. And this is a question I want you to get audiences. Listen to what I'm going to ask her because you need to understand, where do your money stories come from? Where do your money beliefs? At that moment, when you reflect back now, Michelle, did you have more of your mother's money stories or did you have more of your father's money stories? Who did you more emulate in like?
That's such a great question, Daniel. So I definitely emulated my father, but I actually thought I was emulating my mother. Like it was almost like my dad was the one who was like willy-nilly with his spending, right? Like had to have the new truck every 2 years. As a matter of fact, I remember going when I finally figured out, like, oh, I think I want to go to college in Florida, right? Because there was like sun here. And I went to my parents and I was like, here's what I think I want to do. I worked with the guidance counselor. I'd be great at fashion merchandising. And here's colleges. And there was one in like Fort Lauderdale. And they looked at me and said, great. How are you going to do that? And I remember putting this armor on that was like, really? Like, I'm your kid. And my brother's in the Marines, right? And I'm like, I'm the only one you're responsible for. How could you not figure out the part that I might want to go to college? And that was the story that I adopted. Okay. It wasn't their truth, but it was what I laid on me and that what became my truth. That I now went to community college in the local town. Everybody else went off to universities. I was the one that had to pay for, myself to go to school because they weren't prepared. So there was all of this amplified parts of my own story. It wasn't the truth. My parents just believed that if we were going to invest in education, that we should make the investment in education, right? And it took me years of wearing that. I'll show you watch what I can do without you, right? That became my money story. And the money story and how I showed up with that financial immaturity and making decisions that looked like I was making great decisions. And eventually I thought it would all catch up, right? Because that's part of the story, is that we believe that what we're doing, that the results are going to catch up. But the reality is I wasn't operating from a sense of financial maturity. I was actually operating from a sense of, let me show you, let me prove to you, I'm never going to be like you. All of those things that were really hardcore armor
So
that
I'm
were,
curious. So at this point, like, could your parents afford to send you to college, or they just made it? Is it that they couldn't afford it, or they could afford it?
I think it was a combination of both, to be honest with you. There wasn't preparation where dollars were put aside for that. I watched my mom, even like with Christmas, she did Christmas clubs, $5 a week, vacation clubs, $5 a week. So my mother was budgeting and naming her dollars in advance and honestly teaching me about money my entire childhood, not from a place of, I never heard her say we can't afford that, but she was very conscious of what was coming in and what was going out. Right.
Hmm.
So, but my assignment and my story to that was very, very, very different. Very different.
So then automatically you're like, I want to be a spender because I don't want to be controlled like my mom was.
That's right.
I
That's right.
think
Because I
so. So,
saw it
so
as,
listen to that. Listen to that, ladies and gentlemen. Write this down. First of all, write this question to yourself. Where do my money habits come from? Where does my money story come from? Does it come from your mom? Does it come more for your dad? And whose money beliefs do you in who do you inhabit more, your mom's or your dad's? And I love what you're saying, because don't miss this, audience, because what she's saying is this, is that her mom did $5 here, $5 there. Everything was budgeted, coming in, coming out. And right, it's kind of like a kid that's never drank alcohol, or had a glass of wine or whatever,
that's right.
and they don't, like, the house is really strict. As soon as they go to college, they get plastered, and my son would be like,
Woohoo.
because they never had, they right, and they go over the top because
Yeah.
they never experienced it. So the fact that you were free, like, I'm going to go show my mom I can do this, and you got ended up 15,000 in debt, which it's a good thing, right? Because it was valuable lessons.
Yes.
And
Yes.
but I love what we're talking about, because so many people, I want you to understand, ladies and gentlemen, where do my money stories come from?
Yeah.
Where do my money's belief come from, my mom or my dad? And why
Yeah.
do you believe them? And are you still believing them? Maybe you're 40 years old and you're still broke. Well, maybe you're that spender that never saves. Or you're wondering, man, why can I get ahead? Well, maybe you come from a space of scarcity where you're like, I can't afford that. And you're
That's
saying
right.
this language, like Michelle was saying, you're speaking it, right? That I don't think people realize, Michelle,
Yes.
how powerful their words are when they say I can't afford it. What they're really
Yes.
doing. I love what you said, because there's not only are they cementing it for today,
But
cementing
in
it
the
for
future.
tomorrow, and they're never going to be able to afford it. Let's kind of go deeper there. What do you mean
Yeah.
by they cement it? Because I think people don't have the awareness of what they say many times. And
Yes.
then they
I
wonder,
agree.
why am I stuck? Why am I in this rut? Why am I always broke? Well, to me, I always teach this, right? We're gonna have our Millionaire Mind boot camp here coming up this weekend, and we're like,
Yeah.
the more you say I can't afford it, you're never gonna afford it.
That's
Right?
right.
And
Yeah.
you gotta change that paradigm. So how does
Yeah.
someone change that paradigm of going from A to B to where?
Yeah, I think for me, if I come back to the lessons that I learned one of the lessons that I learned was that financial consistency is actually what led to my financial stability. When I actually started applying the real lessons around money, like not spending more than what I had, understanding that I could be complacent, like I could still want a lot. I mean, I literally am sitting here with my vision board, right? Like there are things on the board like for the next 3 years, right, that I want to attract and the things that I'm working towards. But there's a real desire for clarity versus like uncertainty, right? Like, what are the results that I'm after? How can I get there? I think that it's really getting down to understanding that our financial chops, like the better question, our brain is going to answer the questions, right? We just have to flip the script. And I'm certain that you teach this as well. But I had to learn that financial consistency is actually what led to financial stability, which meant having a plan, right? I don't even like the word budget, but I love a spending plan, knowing where the dollars are going to go before they
I
actually
love
arrive.
I'm laughing because I don't like the word budget either, because I don't
I don't
believe.
like the word budget. It's like diet, right? But I
Yeah.
also love shocking people because people go, ooh, budget? No way. Like, I don't want to be restricted. I want what I want. But that's generally what gets people into the trouble, right? And for me, it's more of understanding that it was having a plan, not just the dream. That was the biggest part of actually achieving the success that I was looking for. The results of financial avoidance are always the same. It's misaligned spending, missed opportunities, and a lack of financial stability. And I don't know about you, but when I can identify today that one of my core values is financial stability. It's not even financial freedom. Of course I want freedom, right? I want the ability to impact millions of lives and to change things in my community and teach my children that our financial DNA, it can be different than how I grew up. And what, if you have ancestors that came from the Depression era, you're already walking with that DNA. So how do we own the fact that we can shift it and we can literally rip the chains away and start to implore our own mindset, the way we walk, the way we speak, and do the work, because it's work.
So how did
You
you go?
know?
How did you go from that? I love what you're saying though, right? Because think maybe y'all missed that, ladies and gentlemen. She says, I don't say financial budget. I have a financial spending plan, which is
Yeah.
your financial budget, but it's a hack, right?
Yes.
I love that you said that. I never I go against some of the teaching that say I don't believe in an emergency fund. I believe in a
Yeah.
freedom
An
fund.
abundance, and I call it an abundance fund.
Yeah,
That's right.
mine's my freedom fund, because if you focus on an emergency, what are you going to attract is an emergency.
That's right.
So what are one or two steps besides, right? I love what you said, because I believe that too, right? Spend less than what you make. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying in lack, but right, if even though you could afford $1 million house,
Yes.
maybe you don't buy it, right? You buy a $500,000 house, which is
Yes.
still a badass crib, but you save
Yes.
some of the difference or you invest some of the difference. So
Yes.
so so what are two or three steps that our audience can take to really, let's talk about the mentality and the brain changing that needs to
Yeah.
happen in the beliefs about money. How does somebody change the beliefs? What are two takeaways?
Longer term, yeah.
Yes.
I think the first thing is understand that in order to get where you want to go, you do actually have to do things differently. So if you are finding yourself in a place of stress, of lack, of scarcity, of there's just not enough, $40,000 of credit card debt, like I found myself, like there is a way out. So the first thing is take a step back and know that your circumstances today is not your destiny, right? Where you are right now, you've got to not be looking in the rearview mirror and carrying all that weight with you. You've got to put on a different mindset that says, and everybody says the windshield's bigger than the rearview mirror. It's 100% true. You've got to glance at the rearview mirror to kind of, make sure you're not making the same mistakes, but you can adopt new mindset. You can adopt new behaviors. And I think, the first thing is you've got to start. You've got to make a different decision that where you are right now in your business or with your family or with your finances, whatever it is, that you have to make a decision. So the first step is, do you want a different outcome? Do you want your circumstances to improve? And if the answer is hell yes, then you made the first step, which is you're making a decision. The second thing is you've got to get educated, right? You can't just decide you're going to wake up and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to figure it out if you've never had any financial education. They're not teaching personal finance in school. They're teaching trigonometry and statistics. And I have, sons who are engineers and my stepsons have come to me and said, like, PhD, okay, what's a mortgage? Because they were never taught what a mortgage, they know they need it to buy a home, but they don't know how to get it. And because it's not normalized in school. So the first thing is also understanding, if you've tried a budget before, if you've tried doing planning with your money, maybe there's a new way that you can learn to do it right. Or maybe you've never tried, or maybe you were never taught any of it. So you've got to step in and start to learn, how do you manage money differently, right? This is a really great way to do that. The Path to Profits has an entire middle chapter about flow, and it literally gives you the stepping stones and all of the exercises. As you say, pull out your pen. I say, pull out your credit card statements and your bank statements for 90 days, go under the hood of your personal, go under the hood of the business, and just start to neutralize the numbers. And if they're not so emotional, right, you can start to figure out a plan. How do you debt snowball? What do you need to make to fix the problem? Sometimes that's bankruptcy. I'm going to call it out. Like, Some people will avoid everything to manage, like, I can't file bankruptcy. But I work with divorced women and men who sometimes the reset, they've been trying for 3, 4, 5 years. There was a medical event, there's kids to take care of. And it's like the shame in the game, the shame and the blame have to go away so you can actually get clear about how to move yourself from where you are to where you want to go. So it may not be the path that I want everybody taking, but you shouldn't not look at all of your options. So the first thing is decision. The second thing is get educated. What are your options? How can you what road is right for you? Set the GPS for where you want to go, but not everybody's taking the same directions. If you're in Texas and I'm in Florida, we're going to have two different roadmaps. So, first look at your own scenario and get support if that's what you need to figure out how to get yourself out of financial avoidance and into a better situation.
Are you an aspiring speaker? Do you have a book that you've been wanting to write for months, maybe even years? Or are you an aspiring podcaster? You want to start that podcast like the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show and don't know where to start? Well, at Daniel Gomez Enterprises, we can help you do all three. We can help you become that paid speaker, share your story to the world, write your book, and get your podcast launched and help you produce it. We'd love to help you. Give us a call at 210-663-5954. That's 210-663-5954. We can help you become that paid speaker, write that book, and launch your podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call now. So you said something interesting. I've heard you say this like 2 or 3 times already. The word shame. How does, and I'm asking you because I teach this, right? So many people don't realize that shame can keep you in poverty levels. Shame and guilt can keep you broke. How do you intertwine that into your teachings? Because there's a lot of people that I see that they'll reach, right? They start to win a little bit.
Yeah.
And then shame comes in and they tell themselves, I don't deserve this.
Yes.
So they feel shameful because they go buy that new car or they go buy something that, right, they really deserve it. But then they feel that sense of guilt or shame, or maybe they made a mistake. They made a financial mistake. God knows I never forget Juno, right? I think I went and bought I was going to buy eggs back in the day before the .com busted. And the guy goes, no, why don't you just buy Juno, buy the whole website? I'm like, great, right? It was when Yahoo and Juno came out.
Yeah.
AOL. I bought Juno, lost almost $4,000. I'm like, fudge.
Yeah.
But it's like, you can't carry the shame with you forever. It's like, you know what?
That's
It was a
right.
lesson learned. Don't listen to that financial advisor anymore.
That's right.
But stuff like that, somebody, the average person will take a loss and will just say 4,000, and then they'll never try nothing new again because of that small 4,000. And I said, okay, it was a lesson learned. But then what I realize is now as your business grows, as you grow, not that you want to take these bigger hits, but you're able to overcome these bigger hits as you grow and you mature in your finances and as your business grows and scales.
Yes, because you're not avoiding the money, right? You're growing and you're creating this sense of financial maturity that comes with making decisions. You're actually putting something between, you're correcting buying behaviors. You're realizing that a lot of the things that are coming at us is marketing. You're starting to educate yourself about the fact that it's not even you that's screwing up. It's like, oh, there's like $1.3 billion of marketing that came at me this week. And I've now got to learn how to put some, discernment between my decision making and pulling a trigger and not chasing all the squirrels that are being thrown our way. I think that the shame is part of the shame is one, addressing, right? Being around people that aren't going to shame you, first of all, for the mistakes that you're making and putting the right things putting the right people around you, making sure that you're continually learning so that you don't repeat the same mistake over and over and over again and be like, oh yeah, it just keeps happening to me. Well, it happened for you probably the first time. If you continue to do it, it's happening to you. Yes. But I think that, a lot of the shame thing is, it's, first of all, many people need help around the shame. They can't just unpeel the shame. They've got to go through the layers of where that shame came from in order to make correction. But I always say you first have to change the channel. And if you're around people that have a scarcity mindset, they're just going to fuel the fire. They're going to put gas on that fire, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, rather than being around positive people that understand that we can make mistakes and that mistake can be a lesson in our learning and part of the journey. And so
So let
You
me ask
know,
you this
shame.
question. This is a great point because I think people need to hear this. I think the shame many times comes because you make a mistake, whatever it is. It could be a thousand,
Mhm.
right? To some people, that's right. Our audience is a right spectrum. A
Yeah,
$500 mistake can be devastating to somebody, or $1,000 mistake. So whether it's $1,000 mistake or a $20,000 mistake, do you see when you work with people that sometimes like the hardest person to forgive is themselves? So that's why
a
they stay
hundred
in the
percent,
shame.
100%,
Talk to that person
100%.
for a minute if you don't mind. That is walking, right? They don't understand what's going on, and
Yeah,
God brought them to this show, and they have shame because they haven't forgiven themselves for that
yes,
mistake in business or whatever finances. Talk to
yeah,
that person for a moment if you don't mind.
I love that. So what I would say to you is shame is the weight and the armor that will keep you from your greatest potential. You're
Mm,
not meant to carry shame. We're not meant to walk without God. We're meant to lean into Him for our purpose. And if we are cloaking ourselves in shame, we're simply relying on ourselves, right? We're not good enough. We're not worthy enough. We're screwing it up. We're not the right daughter. We're not the right child. Like, we're literally just like taking our righteousness and just throwing it out the window. And honestly, shame for me is a reminder that you're trying to go it alone. Give it over. Give it over. And so, how do you do that? You get quiet, you get with God, you ask for forgiveness, you forgive yourself, you remind yourself of the glory of grace and the fact that it's not meant for you to carry. It's meant for you to release, and it's not meant for you to walk alone. And so a lot of it is we hold on because we're controlling everything ourselves. We want the perfect outcome. We want to fix it ourselves. We're screw ups. We're not worthy of his love. And I just simply am going to come back. I love that how we opened up this conversation to start with. It comes back to you're here on purpose and for purpose. And in order for you to be in your greatest potential, shame must go.
okay.
Mhm.
I think, that not that I think, but I know that for myself, when my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017, like I had a lot of guilt. I had a lot of shame because I felt like I had a lot to do with it because it was just right in my culture, Hispanic, Mexican. It's like we run the household, what we say goes. And you and me are a lot alike, right? We're real dominant. We're the bottom line people. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we're results driven. And my
Yeah.
wife is that introvert. Like, she's the amiable. That right, she loves people. I don't
Yeah.
want to say she's a tree hugger, but she's a recycled person to say that she cares about people. So
Yeah.
when you speak up, it's like sometimes they close down because
Yeah.
that's who they're wired to be, part of their DNA.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that in forgiving myself, like I remember it was a process I went through, but I think this is the part that I really want to get your perspective on is we make the mistake and we think it's there. It ends there. And what I mean by that is I forgave myself in 2017 in November because that's when she had her double mastectomy.
Mhm.
And then like a year later, we were literally like watching TV. She was still going on her breast cancer journey. I think by that time she was on like her fifth operation of her 8 major
Wow.
ones. But I just started crying. Like we were watching TV, like nothing was wrong. It was like a Saturday or Sunday evening. And she's like, why are you crying? And I'm like, I don't know. It
Yeah.
was like a deeper healing that was happening. And I think so many times we forgive ourselves once and we don't realize that no, as God takes you higher,
Yes.
he's going to continue to go deeper. And literally, like it was just I just teared up. I was like, wow, like she goes, what's wrong? I said, I don't know. I said, I feel like a failure. Like all of a sudden, like nothing was said, but it just
Mhm.
inside and it was just a deeper healing. Talk to us about that. Like, do you think sometimes
Wow. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that experience. Seriously, because I think you just hit the nail on the head. Much like grief, people may process grief and get and find healing in the thing that they're grieving, but grief doesn't have a timeline either, right? And so this element of story that you just shared about being on the couch, a few years later, I had a very similar experience as well when my son was a senior in high school and I was already at that point, 8 years post-divorce. And I feel we did a great job. Like, we are solid with how we had parented. We can be together with our grandchildren. Like, it's so good. And we just have really done it well. Like, I think like we've honored each other outside of where we were, but there was this element of shame the night that my son was going down to receive his senior award on the football field for soccer. And I realized that there was one picture of him that they made these boards, and I realized there was one. And I remember walking down with my former husband and my new husband, who was sitting in the bleachers, completely supportive of not wanting to take a place on the field, even though he had been invited by my former husband and my son. Like, this is your moment. The two of you sacrificed a lot to get him where he is today. And I remember feeling a similar feeling, like this overwhelming sense of shame of what I didn't do right and what I could have done better in the marriage and in our relationship and for my kids. And it was overwhelming in a moment that was such a highlight reel of my son's life. And I cloaked myself like in 10 minutes, and I had no idea it was coming. Right. And so
It's
I
real.
completely
It's
feel
real.
you. Yes, it's real. And I love that you're bringing this up, because we don't talk about this. We don't talk about how shame and grief we can do the work, and then all of a sudden it's there and it's back, because the timeline isn't always our timeline. There's more to learn and more to undo. And I think that just talking about it makes the experience a little more normalized for people that go through it and don't feel like they're alone. So just this conversation, I honestly, Daniel, haven't thought of that moment. My son is 24 years old, and
Yeah.
that happened when he was 18. I haven't had a thought about it since I did the work around it
Yeah.
and made some peace with it, because, part of it is feeling it. You've got to feel it in order to forgive it, and in order also to see how far you've grown. The reality that happened in that moment was I could have stayed stuck in the shame that I had a big D on my chest for divorce, or I could go back and look at how we as parents were on the field together, that he had been, my current husband was invited down by my former husband, and that we were going to dinner after this event and all of us be together to celebrate. Like, I had to step back and see how far I had come. So God will take us into a new place of grief or shame, not take us there. We go there, and sometimes we're taken there in that journey to see how far we've come, and then
Yes.
recommit to how much further we still want to go in that relationship. Like, I could have completely just derailed and gone in a whole different emotional, physical space that evening and completely been disconnected. And thankfully, because I'm aware of all of these like layers that I've gone through personally as well, and I know I'm not done, because I'm always chasing my potential. And when you're chasing your potential, you're going to come back face to face with the younger version of you. But the best part is you also get to turn forward and come face to face with the future version of you.
And people may be saying, well, why are y'all talking about grief and unforgiveness in this? Because this is a stuff that causes people to self-sabotage,
That's right.
and they don't even realize it. This
Yeah.
is this is the deeper stuff that keeps you broke.
Yes. Yeah. It
And we
keeps
don't
you broke.
realize it. Because right, you get a win, right? We'll just say you
Mhm.
get a big win. You get that $10,000 contract for your cleaning business. You get that $10,000 contract for your coaching
Yeah.
business. And then there's a party that says, I don't deserve this.
That's
But
right.
the thing
And
is,
you sabotage it.
you don't know why you don't deserve it. You feel it, and
Yeah.
then you do everything the wrong way in the fact that you don't receive it. So now you start arguing with your wife, you start arguing with your kids,
Yeah.
you start arguing with your employees. And that's where the self-sabotage comes, ladies and gentlemen. So really take a moment and write this down, right? Do I need to forgive myself deeper?
Yeah.
Do I need to forgive myself a second or third time for something?
Yeah.
Write that down for yourself and put your name there. And like for me, what I always say is, Daniel, do I need to forgive myself deeper?
Yeah.
Daniel,
That's so good.
who else do you have to forgive? So, ladies and gentlemen, maybe your name's Rick listening to this, or John. John, do I need to forgive myself deeper? And then
Beautiful.
the answer is going to come, because it was ironic. Actually, he was an insurance agent. He was a financial advisor, and he's like, I go, dude, like, I don't know who you're angry at, but your business ain't growing because you're pissed off at somebody. And he was
Mhm.
hard headed that he wasn't. Said, shut up, because I had to talk to him that way. I had to be direct with him because he was kind of that person. Said, say your name and ask yourself this question: who are you holding resentment towards?
Mhm.
Goes, nobody. I'm like, will you do the exercise? He says, yes. He did the exercise. He called me crying that night, and it came up. It was his stepmom.
Mm.
He didn't realize how much resentment he had. The moment he released the resentment, he sold like
Yes.
3 or 4 huge policies of finances and insurance on this other
Yes.
side because
Yes.
they removed the
Beautiful.
lid, and people don't see that.
They don't see that. And so I love that we went here because it's something that isn't talked about enough, for sure. And the support that you gave him, right? First, he has support because many times we're trying to walk the journey alone, and entrepreneurship is a very lonely road. And you've got to have really good guides around you. And I think even in today's world, people aren't sure where to turn because there's 1,000 things a day that they're hearing, from a reel to a TikTok to YouTube to this to a podcast, all the things. And it's like, one, know you're not meant to walk it alone, but find the guide, right? What a beautiful gift that you gave him. He could have excelled for the next 3 years and literally hit a wall at the deepest, darkest place, or the highlight reel of his business, and then never been able to reach further because he didn't have a great guide. So, it's funny because for me, I tend to attract people that are healers and out there, with conscious creators doing things in the world. And I hear many times that, especially with the Path to Profits, when I ask people to price their vision, they say, oh, pricing my vision gets in the way of manifesting it, right? That's really just language for I don't want to do the work. As he said, like, I don't really want to, why? I'm fine. Well, I call BS on it as well, because the reality is that when you're precise and clear in your asks and you're willing to do the work to align yourself with what you desire, God, source, the universe, whatever somebody who's listening may call it, I call it God will deliver because I'm lining up. I'm lining up. And I would never recommend that you ditch your practice for what you believe, but don't use the law of attraction mystery teachings, right? If you're listening, like, really understand that it is about getting clear and listening for your purpose, listening for the path, and calling in the guides that are going to support you to your potential.
Yes.
I've
So
never walked this journey alone. I don't know about you, but 35 years as an entrepreneur, I've always had guidance.
yeah, well, I believe, right, every coach needs a coach, and I mean, there's this whole year I invested in a huge program, 20,000, just to be in a room with other with the
Absolutely.
because we need that. Sometimes it's just a simple conversation. Sometimes it's just observation. Sometimes it's just
That's right.
sometimes it's just knowing, right? It's like if I need help, I can call them, right? I don't think I need somebody to hold my hand, but I do need guidance and advice many times, and I think so many times we don't ask for the help because we're embarrassed or we just feel like ashamed, like we're talking about that, or we feel like, no, like if you're at 1 million and you're trying to go to multiple millions, you're gonna need
Yes,
help. If you're at a decamillion, you're trying to go to half a million,
that's
you're gonna
right.
need help. Like everybody needs help. Or if you're a new entrepreneur trying to just hit 100,000, like there's nothing wrong
That's
with
right.
that. Like we all need help.
Yeah.
The moment you put your
Education and
pride in your
guidance.
ego.
Absolutely. Yep.
So let me ask you this: what is the best business advice that you can give somebody?
I would first say, don't let blind people proofread your vision. When you're
Mhm.
clear about what
Say
you're
that again.
after,
That was good.
don't let blind people proofread your vision, right? When you're clear about the results that you're after and the grandest vision for your life, you're going to have so many people that are going to say, like my parents did at 18, 16, get your head out of the clouds. You're dreaming too big. No, you're not. Nothing is too big if that seed was planted in you. So lean into that and be really cautious who you put in your front row, right? I always tell my children, there, picture yourself in the arena and there's a whole lot of bleachers, and you don't discard people. If you've been harmed, maybe there's people that have come in and out of your life in a season and they can belong in the bleachers, but you better be really careful who you're putting in your front row And sometimes people move, right? Based on your own growth, their growth, the season that you're in. But you've got to breathe life into your vision, not have somebody blow the candle out.
What is a scripture or a quote that you rely on in times of adversity, Michelle? What is a scripture or a quote that you rely on in times of adversity?
Jeremiah 29:11. Yeah.
For I know the plans I have for you.
Yes.
Declares
Whenever
the
I
Lord.
get in my own way, and you're bringing me to tears right now. Whenever I get in my own way, and things just aren't, they're just not flowing. You know, I wake up every day with 2 prayers: thank you and use me. And sometimes it doesn't always, you know, I don't really understand it, but it's what gets me. I love life. I love connecting with new people and hearing what they're up to. And God uses people to breathe life into your vision. But sometimes we do find ourselves on a path where we're not really sure if we're on the right path and things aren't as easy. We have children and spouses and communities and clients and ourselves, right? And so that for me is the biggest reminder.
How does somebody get a hold of you? They want to connect with you.
Well, MichelleJacobik.com is my website. Social media, I'm always posting tips, tricks about profitability, life, passion, vision, goals. And you can just follow me at Michelle Jacobik on all of the social places: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn, if you're a professional and you're on LinkedIn.
What an amazing episode today. I love this, Michelle.
So
Thank you for
fun.
joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, go back and watch this again. So much wisdom that Michelle dropped. Think about what's my money story? Where did that money story come from? Maybe it's both from your mom or dad. B, are you walking around with shame,
Mhm.
guilt? Because that'll definitely keep you broke and with the lid on your life and your business. And then have you allowed yourself to grieve? I think that spoke to me when she said,
Yeah.
right? So many times we say get over it. And no, sometimes there's no end to grieving. Sometimes it takes a month, sometimes it takes a year. So think about what you heard today. Go back and watch it again. And thank you so much for being with us here, ladies and gentlemen. And this weekend, we're excited. We're having our Millionaire Mind Bootcamp in May 24th, 25th. We're going to have our next one November. We want to see you here in San Antonio. And then our next big event is going to be the Sales Accelerator, July 19th and 20th here in San Antonio. So if you're in real estate, if you're anything to do with sales, you need to be at our Business Sales Accelerator Bootcamp, because if you're in business, you're in sales, and so many people don't realize that.
Amen.
This is Daniel Gomez Inspire saying thank you for joining us here. Please share this episode with a friend. And remember, you're valued and you're loved. Have a blessed week, and we'll see you next weekend with another amazing episode on the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show.
This is Daniel Gomez Inspires, and thank you for listening to our show today. Please share this episode with a friend, leave us a review, and subscribe to our show. And for listening to our show today, I want to give you a free gift. I want to invite you to our Millionaire Mind community. Text the word millionaire, that's millionaire, to 210-942-5059. Yes, join our community today and receive millionaire affirmations, inspirational quotes on a weekly basis. That's 210-942-5059. Text the word millionaire today and join our community. And once again, thank you for listening to our show.